I hung everything up. I threw out all of my dance clothes. I kept
Mm.
one pair of point shoes. So I was 22, 23-ish when that happened, and I didn't get back into ballet because I moved back to Odessa in 2009,
Okay.
and I had been searching for an adult ballet class since 2009.
Wow.
So now we're at 2023 when I
Yeah.
started retraining myself.
Good evening and welcome to Art After Dark, where you get to learn about art and culture in the Permian Basin, and I get to fulfill my Dick Cavett fantasy. Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Randy Ham, the Executive Director of Odessa Arts, and today I am thrilled to welcome to our show Tiffany Wood, owner of Skalicky Ballet Academy.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Your studio is right here in downtown Odessa, right?
Yes.
And how long has it been here?
About a year and a half.
Wow, well,
Mhm.
congratulations. Where does Skalicky come from?
Okay, so Skalicky is a family name. It was my grandfather's name. He's from Prague, or was from Prague. And so, due to the fact that I'm teaching the Russian Vaganova method ballet, I thought I would keep the Slavic name to kind of streamline the business.
Well, it's a great, unusual name that nobody will forget, right? So that's
Mhm.
fantastic. Uh, you started ballet, you told me, when you were 3 years old.
Yes,
So that was something your family kind of encouraged.
right.
Um, when did you really when did it go from being something that you just went to class to something that you enjoyed doing and you thought you might want to do for longer in life?
Well, actually, I never had an issue like going to class. It was just always something I had to do, and I wanted to do it. My parents didn't make me do it, but probably I would say by the time I was around 9 or 10, and I went to my first Nutcracker ballet performance in Big Spring, of all
Oh,
places,
wow.
because my grandmother lived in Big Spring and
Yeah.
grandfather. So we went to see the Nutcracker, and I just remember watching the dancers, and I was like, oh man, I want to be like that. And so I think it just was something that I knew, and I just knew I always wanted to do it.
Wow. So you just continued your studies and then you did something um, to further your studies when you turned 16, right?
Right.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that. What was year 16? What made the big difference?
Well, first I was able to drive, but being I was born and raised here in Odessa, and being that at the time there wasn't a lot of resources for us here.
Yeah.
So yes, I went to dance class, and I feel like I learned, the basics and everything, but I knew watching professional dancers that we were nowhere near on the level of, what we could be. And so it started when I was 16. I would travel to Fort Worth with my mom because she did Navy duty weekend there. And I was just cruising around one day, and I came across the Russian ballet school. I forget the exact name now, but I thought, oh, what is that? I'm going to look into that. And I ended up actually popping in there and asking about doing private lessons with them. So from that point on, I would go once a month with my mom and hop into the studio, take my private lesson. But then by the time I was 17, my parents would let me drive there by myself. So I
Oh,
would go
wow.
there about every other weekend and take private lessons with Svetlana Stanova and her husband, Nikolai Simikov.
Wow.
So,
So your parents really encouraged a lot of your attraction to dance and the arts. You played in band as well, is that
hmm
right? What
yes,
did you play?
I played flute starting off, and then I moved to saxophone
I love the saxophone. I was a sax player.
and then violin too. I
Oh,
started violin in sixth grade.
wow. So were you in marching band as
Yes,
well? Yeah, marching band was brutal,
it was
brutal in the
fun
summer.
carrying the saxophone for sure,
Yeah.
right?
Uh, I started out on alto sax,
Mhm.
and by the time I got to marching band in high school, I was playing baritone sax, which is the worst one to
Oh,
carry
yeah.
during marching season. Didn't mind it so much during concert, but during marching
It's
season, it
heavy.
was very, very heavy, and I kept begging them to let me play soprano sax. And
Oh,
so instead, I auditioned for drum
so
major so I
pretty.
didn't have to carry
There
anything.
you go.
Yes. So that was a lot of fun. Um, but you also paint as well.
Right.
Is that right? When did
Mhm.
you start painting?
In let's see, I was about 19 when I went to Collin County College in Plano and enrolled in art classes is when I
Mm.
started. I always drew, but I never really took painting or ventured into painting in high school or growing up. So,
So it's really easy to talk about the relationship of dance and music. So, in order to be a good dancer, it helps to have a foundation in music. So that works. What did your drawing and your painting, how did that influence your dance and vice versa?
oh man. So I'd have to say, let's see, when I first started getting the idea of getting into this studio business, well, let me backtrack. It started with wanting to take adult ballet classes. I
Okay.
knew that that was something I had been missing in my life, and I've always worked out and kind of stayed in shape or whatever, but I just knew that I wouldn't get a workout as good as ballet. So every year I would call these studios and see if there was an adult ballet class around town, and nothing ever came up.
Yeah.
So fast forward to August of 23. I guess I kind of went through like a midlife crisis almost. I have 3 kids and the youngest one's 4 now, but I thought, you know what? I'm really missing ballet. I'm missing painting and I'm missing just
Hmm.
doing things that make me happy. So I went into my studio at my house and I just started painting, and it started with I started painting ballet stuff. I really got
Oh, wow.
obsessed with
Okay.
painted some ballet shoes, point shoes, and then I started painting watercolor ballerinas. And it was like, okay, people are gonna think, what's going on? Why are you painting all this ballet stuff? And then that kind of led me into, you know what? If nobody else is gonna offer an adult ballet class, maybe I should start my own. And so I started retraining myself,
Hmm.
and I thought, well, if I'm going to run a successful business, I have to offer ballet to kids too, because I can't just
Yeah,
have a business for adults. So,
sure. But that's indicative of a lot of the way that we work in West Texas, especially in the arts and culture area, because people will say, "Oh God, I wish there was an adult ballet class," or "I wish there was, a First Friday art crawl," or whatever. Uh, but for most people, it stops with the "Oh, I wish."
hmm
That's where it stops. But for most of the time, if you have an idea like that where you want to be a ballet teacher and you think you're the only one, but what I'm assuming you have found out is that people wanted this because they're coming into your studio
hmm
and they didn't even have the initiative to even say, "Oh, I wish." Uh, and what you did was the follow through. You didn't stop with the "I wish," but you went ahead and if I want to teach a school for adult ballet dancers, then there are probably people out there who are adults that want to learn,
right.
right? So, but that's a great way to start talking about your transition from dancer to studio owner. And when you were 22, you had an injury, and so talk a little bit about that as the transition.
Yes. So by the time, I was in my 20s, I was already dead set on what I wanted to be. And I was working towards that goal with the private lessons from
Mhm.
Svetlana and everything, and enrolling in classical ballet classes at Collin County. And well, I had actually suffered from back injuries, or not really an injury per se, back issues from the time I was in 8th grade.
Oh, wow.
And I never knew what the problem was. I went to chiropractors
Hmm.
every week and I was in so much pain throughout high school, but I just kept dancing through it. And Um, so by the time I was in college and taking more hours of classes and seeing a chiropractor there in Plano, I had to go to him 3 times a week. And it
Oh
finally
man.
got to a point where he told me I had slip discs and bulging discs, and it was due to ballet. And I
Really?
thought, there's no way it's due to ballet. Like, ballet's good for you.
Right.
Well, if you're taught proper technique and training, it's good for you. So I had all these injuries
Mhm.
that I had no idea it was from the thing that I loved,
Yeah.
but it was just from years and years and years of doing it incorrectly.
Mhm.
And no one really, Svetlana and them tried to correct me, but I think, since I wasn't taught from an early age
Right.
what muscles and where to bend and things like that, it just caused further damage. So he said, "Well, you're going to have to quit ballet." And I said, "There's no way. This is the only thing I know, you know?"
Yeah.
And so I kept going to class for months. And then it finally got to where I couldn't sleep at night. It was so bad. And so finally I was just like, okay, I give up. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, but you were able to find a way to stay involved with ballet. So, was that something that you did almost immediately, or did you just kind of hang up your point shoes for a little while? How
No,
long?
I hung everything up. I threw out all of my dance clothes. I kept
Oh.
one pair of point shoes.
Mhm.
But, so I was 22, 23-ish when that happened, and I didn't get back into ballet because I moved back to Odessa in 2009,
Okay.
and I had been searching for an adult ballet class since 2009.
Wow.
So now we're at 2023 when I
Yeah.
started retraining myself, and surprisingly, retraining myself with utilizing this method, and I actually started from the pre-ballet steps and
Yeah.
exercises and stretching and whatnot. And now I'm 40 and I have zero back issues.
Well, that is
So, yes.
fantastic. So, talk a little bit more about this method. I know you've mentioned it a couple of times. What makes this, first of all, pronounce it for me again?
Okay, it's Vaganova. It's
Vaganova.
the AKA the Russian method,
Okay.
which has been around since the mid 1700s, 1730s ish. Um, so it's not the first method of ballet. There's
Mhm.
several different methodologies of ballet. But I think the thing with them and what attracted me to that method was, well, I trained with two Russian principal dancers, but then also I connected with two other Russian principal dancers in Ohio recently. Now they're my mentors. But it's a lot of famous ballerinas come from um, the academy in
Yes.
Russia. And you can always kind of point them out on stage. In my opinion, it's a
Yeah.
little bit more slow, more graceful. Um, let's see, what else?
Well, I mean, so in the movements and in the way that you conduct the class, are there like some guiding principles or something that you drill into the students all the time that you have to, I don't know, hold your hand like this, or is there always use your, these muscles? Is there something specific about that method that maybe has some technique that helps you from being injured?
Okay, so, well, first of all, everything that I instill in my students, it all starts with proper um, etiquette in the classroom. So that
Okay.
doesn't really have anything to do with how you move or dance, but it is etiquette and how to act in a classroom
Mhm.
setting, proper posture, how we enter and exit the
Right.
studio. And then one thing that's interesting in every class that I've ever been to, dance class, and I took ballet, tap, jazz, hip hop. I took all the things. It wasn't
Yeah.
always just ballet, but almost every class begins with floor exercises. Okay.
Okay.
But the way that you do the floor exercises has a huge impact on how you're going to dance and progress to the bar. So, in ballet class, we have our floor work that we begin with,
Mhm.
and then you move to the bar. So, if you're doing it properly on the floor, you're going to look better at the bar. And then when you can do it properly at the bar, then you move to the center. But those aren't necessarily technique as far as how you utilize your body. So in ballet, we do a lot of turnout, which actually
Hmm.
comes from your hips, not your
Right.
feet. So proper turnout is a huge thing. Proper head placement, facial expressions, all have a role in how you do the actual steps. So you can teach steps to anybody.
Yeah.
You can teach steps, but the steps are going to look different if you have the technique behind it.
Well, I like that you started out by classroom etiquette because that really sets the tone for everything that you do, uh, following that. And if you walk into a room and from the minute you're in the space, you have the right attitude
Mm-hmm.
and the right respect for what you're doing, then it just frees you up for the rest of the class. And that's that. But I wanted to talk about something that you mentioned before we started, and that was in that time that you were not dancing and you didn't start your studio yet, um, but you were painting still, and you graduated from drawing to painting, and some people maybe gave you some advice about what that would be like. What
Mm-hmm.
what what were you told?
Um, well, basically, that you can't do anything with an art degree.
Oh, I shouldn't laugh. That's so
It's
infuriating.
unfortunate, and going back to my grandmother and the name.
Mm-hmm.
So, my grandmother was a concert organist and she played all over the world. She played in Prague and Poland, and she had an art degree from SMU. And it may not be the highest paying type jobs,
Sure.
right? But for me, it's more of like a self fulfillment thing.
Yes.
So, do what makes you happy, basically.
Right. Do what makes you happy. The money will follow.
Hmm.
Um, we we did an economic impact of the arts study back in 2019, and we found out that the arts and culture sector of Odessa contributed $6.1 million to the economy
Oh, wow.
here in 1 year. And so, it's not just the people buying tickets to the events, it's the pre-show dinner, it's the shopping for a new dress to go to the Wagner or whatever. And it also supports,
Hmm.
um, you're a resident here. You pay taxes, you have children that go to school here, and all of those things, and your income is generated through your classes and the tuition and the admission for any recitals, which we will talk about in
Yes.
a minute. So, you know, the arts actually do contribute to the economy, and you can make a living in the arts. It may
Hmm.
not be the highest income bracket ever, but your grandmother was playing organ all over the world,
Hmm.
and the opportunity that that affords you to be able to do that, even if you were dancing part time in a troupe but they were invited to London to perform,
Exactly.
you know.
Yeah. Hmm.
So what are your plans for the future of the studio now that you've got about a year and a half under your belt? What do you want to do?
Well, so the next step is to start preparing for our first performance.
Yeah,
So unlike your common studios, we will not be doing a year-end recital.
sure.
We only offer ballet. I will start incorporating character dance soon
Hmm.
once I get everybody trained well enough to progress to that. But we'll be doing performances, so much like Midland Festival Ballet, but
Yeah.
here in Odessa.
Hmm.
So that's the plan for the future, and I hope to put on our first performance. I won't say what that's going to be yet, the theme, but I've already been planning it for several months now.
She told me during a break, and I'm so excited.
It'll be fun for all ages, because the goal is to be able to incorporate the little 2 to 4 year olds
Yeah.
and have one big show, but not a recital. As I mentioned before, you can throw a cute little outfit with sequins on anybody and
Sure.
teach them steps, but it just doesn't look the same, right?
Right. You want it, and I think your students want to do a full-fledged production. That's if you are someone that is attracted to performance, then you want to be on stage in front of people at some point doing something of, uh, uh
Not me. I will not be on stage,
oh, come
but they can.
on. I think you should be. I think you should be. I've already got a role for you to do that. But yeah, so we've got that performance to look
Mhm.
forward to.
I have like a vision board
Yeah.
of it in my studio. And so all of the little girls have been asking me questions. Well, who's going to get this role? Who's going to get that role? Well, we have to try out for it. We have to
Yes.
audition, but they're super excited. They have it figured out in their mind who's going to be what.
That's
So,
exciting. That's exciting. I bet your students are excited to come to class. How many days a week do you teach at the studio?
So I am actually there Monday through Friday.
Okay.
Friday is my adult class, so that's only 1 hour in the
Mm-hmm.
morning. But Tuesdays and Thursdays are the busiest days. I teach 4 classes back to back.
Oh, wow.
Um, so right now I'm the only instructor, and it's been rewarding. I've had 47 students my first year enrolled, and which is I'm on a lot of um, dance studio groups and whatnot on Facebook, and that's all pretty much unheard of. A lot of them only have, 18, 20 their first
Yeah.
year. But being such a specialized art form, I was really surprised because I did have some kind of negative feedback on that as well. Like, well, who's going to be interested in only ballet? Well,
Right.
surprisingly, I've had a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and actually, one of my adult students is an ex-professional dancer with the Cuban National Ballet. He
Really?
was a soloist, and he was a soloist with the Opera Vegas Ballet as well. So he's been really impressed with my adult
Wow.
class, and
We're gonna have to get him on the show.
yes,
That
yes.
would be. I bet he's got some amazing stories to
Uh-huh.
tell.
And
Yeah.
then one of my little girls, her grandmother used to be a professional dancer and traveled all over Europe. So she's been
Uh,
really just ecstatic that we have something like this to offer in Odessa. And it's
well,
been
that's got to be
fun.
very encouraging and,
Hmm.
and and heartwarming for you to be able to take a chance like this and see the rewards so quickly. So that's been fantastic. So what are the things that ballet can teach you that go beyond the classroom or the performance space? If not that this is going to happen because I'm an old man, but if I were ever to take a ballet class, what would be the things that I would be able to carry out into my everyday life?
Okay, so I would say for students or young children, it teaches correct posture
Hmm.
and dedicate hard work, dedication. I think that's one of the main things that I learned through so many years in ballet is, it is hard work. It's not easy, especially when you go on point. But it helped me to never give up in like other areas as far as like athletics and whatnot. I feel like I can work really hard when it comes to athletics. And I was always in track, cross country, and all the things at school outside of dance too.
Yeah.
Now, as far as for adults, the interesting thing is um, my professional dancer, he's the youngest one in my class. I think he's 27. But the other ones are in their 50s, 60s.
Really?
I even had an almost 80-year-old at one point. She ended up
No.
having to quit, but she's a good friend of mine, but her health is going downhill. But
Yeah.
it has helped with their balance, coordination, especially when you start getting past 50, I think, or 60, you start to realize, oh, my balance isn't that great anymore. So it has helped them correct their posture, their balance, and of course, lose weight, which is
Yeah.
really good. But also, it to me, it brings out a level of you can really embrace your femininity.
Yeah.
So you're correcting all these things, and then you can walk out and feel confident that your posture is good, you look good.
That is one thing about every single ballet performance I have ever been fortunate to witness. The confidence in the room is just overwhelming. The minute those dancers walk on stage, they are so regal, and I love that. I am in my 50s. I am still not convinced that I'm going to be able to do ballet, but you are making the case for
Uh-huh.
me, and I really appreciate that. I do want to say, um, it's great that you decided to fill this need in the community that sometimes the community didn't even know they wanted. I think that's one thing about a lot of people, not just in West Texas, but just you don't know what you need until you see
Mhm.
it, right? And so for you to have the vision to know that the community needs this before anybody else actually said so is fantastic. And I hope you're around for a very, very long time. I look forward to really seeing your first performance with your students. And also, I wanted to thank you. In case you didn't know, folks, during First Fridays, there's a free ballet class for 30 minutes every first Friday in downtown. So if you don't know, if you're like me and you're like, oh, I'm too old, I can't do this, I'm not limber enough, just come down to the studio and give Tiffany 30 minutes and she may make a believer out of you.
I make it easy on you.
All right. Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for being here
Thank
with
you.
us. And until then, this is Art After Dark. Cheers, Tiffany.